Should recruiters from the military be allowed into schools? Some councillors in Denbighshire are calling for more discussions about the consequences of war when the armed forces go into schools to speak to children. Mabon ap Gwynfor is a Plaid Cymru councillor for Llandrillo and the Vice Chair of Fellowship of Reconciliation in Wales. Also with us, Rear Admiral Dr. Chris Parry, former NATO commander who also served in the Royal Navy during the Falklands War. Morning, both of you. Let's start with you, Mabon ap Gwynfor. What's at issue here?
Well, it was raised at one of the committees that we felt that we needed more discussion around the role of the armed forces in the schools and in our education, and the discussion around war, conflict and peace. And the discussion developed into how the military were going into schools, primarily schools in the most deprived areas, and targeting children from the lower socioeconomic backgrounds in order to recruit them. So we felt that this needed greater discussion, and that we needed to really broaden the discussion out with schools, with the education department, to see if, first of all, we should allow the military to go into our schools to recruit at such a young age, and, as I mentioned earlier, the broader discussion around conflict and peace.
All right. Do you object to the armed forces recruiting in schools?
Personally, yes, I do. I don't think it is right that the armed forces go and recruit children. The UK is an international outlier in that respect. There's no other nation in Europe that recruits children into their armed forces. And, you know...
What's your definition of a child?
Well, in this instance, it's anybody under the age of 18, because, you know, if you're under the age of 18 legally, you're considered a child. And isn't it ironic that these youngsters aren't allowed to, for instance, go on their Xboxes and play Call of Duty because it's damaging to them, but then they're allowed to join the armed forces? There's a certain irony there.
Chris Parry, what do you say to that?
Well, I think it's a fairly valid challenge. I mean, it's perfectly legitimate in a free society for people to express their views. I think what I would say is that it's perfectly legitimate for other careers to go into schools and say, look, here's a reasonable prospect for you. Here's something you can do for public service for your country. If you fancy that, then please join up. I think it's a bit naive to think that children don't know about war. I think there's as Mr. Gwynfor said, there's quite a wide variety of video games. It suggests, though, that there's something deficient in the teaching of history in schools if they don't know about war and the consequences of war.
Mabon ap Gwynfor?
Well, there is a debate to be had about the teaching of war and conflict and peace. Over the last number of years, we've been remembering what's called the Great War, and where there's a lot of jingoism being around that. We've heard one side of the debate, but we've not heard much about the impact of the non-combatants who died as a consequence. That's true for every war. So yes, there is a debate to be had.
Well, let's cover that quickly then, because there is a new curriculum being rolled out over the next few years in Wales, where schools will be and teachers will be given a great deal more freedom to teach what they think is fit for their pupils and for their schools. Is that best left then to those schools to make that decision, if they are one of those schools with the sort of demographic where the armed forces do come calling on a regular basis? Or is it something you think that should be prescribed within the curriculum? Because there's a debate as well about what level of prescription there will be about what's taught in some schools. What is the base level of knowledge?
Yeah, as a general rule, I think it's best left for teachers to teach. And, you know, it's good that we're going to have more local information and local history and knowledge being part of our curriculum. But as a wider discussion, then yes, I think it should be prescribed to a degree what levels of discussion and education children have about conflict and peace, because we do know that the armed forces target schools in the most deprived areas, because children and young people in those areas have the prospects of them having any form of good employment is very poor, especially considering the cuts that we've had, and that youth clubs have been cut. Local authorities have had their funding cut, so they can't fund those youth clubs. So yes, we need to ensure that people know fully what they sign up to and understand the impact of war and conflict.